So welcome back at Linoleum Animation Film Festival. And our next guest is Mitch McGlocklin, CG artist and film director and animator from San Diego, California. His film Forever was presented yesterday in the program of experimental animation. And today Mitch is gonna talk about making of this film and his artistic practice, which deals with technologies and art. So we're glad to see you here, Mitch. Maybe you give us a short introduction about yourself, about your background, and how did you came into animation path?
Yeah, sure. I'm really happy to be here. Thanks for having me here in Kiev. My background started in live action filmmaking. Well, I guess it started in photography at a really young age. Well, I guess at a really, really young age, I started animating. I started doing Lego animations, and I was always really interested in like the technical aspect of it. While I love artistic practice and filmmaking, it was always the technical challenges that was really interesting to me. So I was always trying to find these new art practices that were like cutting edge, new technology. When I was a teenager, gigapixel images was a really big thing, and so it was taking lots of images to make one giant image, and then it just kind of grew from there. And I always wanted to go to film school, so I went to film school. But I was always kind of more interested in visual effects and like special techniques, and so I just kind of progressed to there, and then I ended up in an animation school where I felt really out of place because I wasn't really an animator, but I just kind of struggled my way through it, and now I love animation. But I'm always kind of doing different techniques. I don't really do like traditional animation because I can't. So I'm always trying to find ways to make my films without truly animating.
Do you have sort of a formal education, university, college, something like that, is something that's connected with your art?
Yeah, I have too much education. I went to University of California, San Diego, where I studied digital photography and video art, and that was a great influence on me because I was exposed to a lot of experimental video art, and because I always thought I wanted to do traditional filmmaking. I was really obsessed with like Jim Jarmusch and Sofia Coppola, and I thought I would do this very like avant-garde black and white filmmaking, but then I was exposed to all this video art and all these different experimental techniques, and like Ryan Trey Carton was a huge influence on me, and Laurie Anderson, who's a big influence on this particular film. But I was still, when I finished that program, I still really wanted to do film. It was my passion, I thought, and I went to a traditional film school at San Francisco State where I learned live action filmmaking. But I was always, doing this weird other stuff, and they didn't really know what to do with me at that university. So then I went for another master's program at University of Southern California in their animation program, and they were very open to any kind of animation, and I really developed my skills there, and I really honed my technical practice and was exposed to a lot of new technology. Like I did a lot of projection mapping, a lot of real-time, a lot of procedural animation, and that's how I got into Houdini, which really helped this film. And then this film is my thesis film, so I just finished, I finished a year ago. But.
So how much time did it take total, your education, like 10 years?
Yeah, about 12 years, so longer than a doctor, so. But I'm not a doctor.
Maybe we'll start from showing a trailer of the film, because I'm not sure that all people here have seen it yesterday.
Sure. Yes, that's the film. It was made using LiDAR, which is light detection and ranging, and so we can go into that if you want.
Yeah. Do you want to? I know you have prepared a sort of presentation. Do you want to start from it?
Yeah, it's kind of a loose presentation, but we already went over this. We can skip that. Yeah, so originally it was going to be a virtual reality piece. It was going to be like a semi... Oh, and I want to say these Ukrainian translations are made by AI, so if they're really bad...
Yeah, it's crappy, actually.
It's not her fault. But yeah, we can thank AI, which is not perfect. Yeah, so originally I was going to... So the story of the film is it's my own experience with a life insurance company that used an AI algorithm to determine if I was eligible for life insurance, and I was denied life insurance. And it really struck me as like a prediction that I was going to die. And I had this huge belief in AI that it was true. So it really scared me. And so I imagined this like virtual reality piece, like a room-scaled piece where the user would walk around and view these point clouds of people doing different things, and they'd be different scales. But I was in school, and when I was telling my classmates and my mentors this, and they were asking me how I came up with it, I told them the story behind the concept, and everyone was way more interested in the true story that happened to me. So then I realized, I really should make this into a film and not a VR piece, because I think it would lose that honesty. And it was difficult to do such an honest piece, but I had a lot of encouragement, and so then it turned into the film. But the technical part of it was I had to make these point clouds, and I went through a series of different techniques. And so at the time that I was making it, I was doing photogrammetry, which we can look at now. Photogrammetry, if you're not familiar with the process, it's taking like roughly 1,000 photos of a space. Like if I was going to do this space, it's pretty large, so I'd probably do like 3,000 photos, very precise locations, moving around, and then it generates a point cloud. And I really loved the point cloud because it was like the ghost of an object, because it shows, this is actually something that I'm working on currently for another film that happens to be about AI. And so this was roughly 2,000 photos of a set of a short film. And when I was doing the photogrammetry, so this is like the middle step of the process. The first step is the photographs. And then I bring it into this software. I use Agisoft, but there's a lot of different softwares you can use. And I would get kind of obsessed with this because you could see through objects. They have different densities. It's not perfect, it's not precise. There's a lot of cleanup involved. And so I knew that I wanted my film to have this look. I didn't want it to be like perfect, because that's what the film is about. It's about technology and AI looking at us as humans, but only getting an imperfect picture. It's only getting part of the picture. So all these little dots felt to me like little bits of information that make a whole, but it's not perfect. But for the film, I thought this was, it was too high fidelity. It was too dense. So I wanted to come up with a way to make it more a lower facsimile. So that was that. And
did you have any references for this imagery? This point clouds?
There is that Radiohead video that came out like 12 years ago. That was a really early one where they were using Xbox Connect to do point clouds and depth mapping. And that was really beautiful. And they were really early adopters. I forget the director's name. Yeah, but that was a reference. And I tried that too. I tried using an Xbox Connect. But again, it was too high fidelity. I wanted something that had lower precision or lower resolution. So then I was introduced to LiDAR, which is light detection and ranging. And let's look at that. have a photo. Yeah, so this is Ouster, and this is the only photo I have of me making the film, unfortunately. So it's this little object, and it was developed for self-driving cars by this company called Ouster. And I reached out to them after I found out about it, because it's very expensive. That little thing is about $16,000, and I was a student with no money, so I couldn't afford it. So I emailed them and I just said, hey, I'm a student and I'm trying to make this film, and your hardware is the best at making LiDAR, and if I could use it, that would be incredible. And they got back to me and they said, yeah, no one has really used our product for filmmaking practices, so we'd be happy to share it with you. And so they lent me one of their units, and so then I had to learn how to use it and go out and shoot with it. And so we can look at how that works and use their software.
Did you have a backup plan if the Ouster did refuse you?
That's a good question. I guess I would have had to go back to the Xbox Connect and just kind of make it work and not be happy with the visuals. So thankfully it worked. I think they had a whole angle where they thought that the university that I went to was going to buy some of their hardware, but I knew there was no chance of that. But I didn't tell them that. Yeah, so this is how the LiDAR looks as I'm capturing it. As you can see, it's a whole 360. This was the first test shoot I did. I was at my parents' house. It was like the Ouster showed up in a box the day before Christmas. So it was like a true Christmas present. And I opened it up and I was trying to figure out, because it's made for developers, it's made for self-driving cars, it's not made for artists. So there was no like YouTube tutorial on how to use it. There was no like, you have to do this and this and this. So I had to just figure it out all myself, which was really fun, the fun part of it. And so as you can see, or I'll play it. So it works it shoots at 10 frames a second. It's a little spinning mirror that's shooting out a laser in 360 degrees with a 45-degree angle view. So you can see like this giant hole in the ground, because the LiDAR is about eye level for this shot, and it can only travel so far. So that was a real challenge, a technical challenge of the film, because it's like shooting a film with like a 100mm lens. Like I can't really do wide shots. I would have to be here and I could only really see your head. And so that was a big challenge too. But I learned to work with it. And so as you can see, so it creates these point clouds, and this was the exact resolution that I was looking for. As you can see, this was me here recording it. And so I really loved this look. And I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, so it gives you it generates these depth maps as well. So it's kind of in between a camera and photogrammetry.
So does it make like shot of 360 angle? How does it work?
Yeah, so it's completely what we call volumetric. It's capturing a volume in 360 degrees. So the Ouster unit is right here, and it's shooting out 360 like a little wedge to get that. But then the challenge was to get this into a 3D package that I could manipulate it and cut it and edit it. And luckily, whoever developed this software must have also used Houdini, because Houdini uses a specific format called BGO, and out of this software I could export BGO files, and then I would bring that into Houdini, and we can look at that too. Well, not that. So this is that same file, and when it comes in, it just looks like this. It's just these dots without color. and but it has attributes. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Houdini. This could turn into like a huge Houdini talk because I love it so much, and I want everyone to use it. But it comes in, and if you see, it has, because when it's collecting the data, the LiDAR, it has like 12 different attributes on it. If you think about a point cloud, it's a point in space, but it also has other attributes. It'll also talk about the intensity of the reflection. It'll talk about like the angle of the surface that it bounced off of. And so it gave me a lot of data that I had to just delete because it was useless to me. But this specific intensity was really important for the film because that's how I colored it. And so I deleted everything else and kept the position and the intensity. And from there, I just kind of put it where I want it. And then this is how I got the colors. They look a little extreme right now. I had to do a lot of post-processing. But as you can see here, I'm taking the intensity from the LiDAR unit and remapping it to its own range, 0 to 1,000, and then plug it into this color ramp. And that's how I got the colors of the film. Yeah, so then I had to take this, and then I float a camera through there. So that's kind of how I can call the film animated, because I animated the camera.
Were you a cameraman for yourself, or you asked somebody to help you just to hold this LiDAR?
A lot of times, I would always bring a friend because I was, if you go back to that photo, because I shot, most of the film happens inside of bars around Los Angeles, but I had this, it's kind of weird to show up at a bar with a laptop and this weird alien-looking thing on a tripod, and there was a big battery that I had that's off-screen and a backpack, and so I always felt uncomfortable going to a bar alone with like this weird setup, and so I'd always recruit a friend to come with me, and sometimes, I would get them to capture it. They would be running the computer while I would go do a little bit of acting. And that final shot of the film where I'm walking down the street, I had to get someone, we had to rig up this weird contraption he was pushing a bicycle, and we put that on the seat of the bicycle, and then I was walking behind it. And then a lot of people think it's like a drone shot, but that's really just the animated camera, because once you get it into Houdini, it's just like 3D animation at this point. I'm not bound by the location of the camera that I shot it with. I can bring in a virtual camera and make my own shots.
Actually, about those bar scenes, if I get it right, it was sort of undercover shooting. So, or how was it? How people did react to that?
Well, I'd always kind of get there and order a beer and like drink one beer and chill, and then I would pull out all the stuff, and then the bartender would be like, "Oh, what's going on here? Like, what are you doing?" And then I would always be very open about it and explain it to them, and they'd come around and look at my screen, and they would see kind of this, what was going on, and they were like, I have no idea what's going on here, but it looks pretty cool. But it was great because other people, the patrons of the bar, they wouldn't know what it is because it just looks like this. So, there's a lot of people in the film that have no idea they were being filmed, which is great. If I had gone to a bar with a camera and started shooting people, they would have acted very different. They would have been probably very angry. But I can use this anonymously. And then I also got around, the rights of image, because it's not really like a clear image of someone. It's like there's really no laws around point clouds at the moment, but I'm sure there will be.
So actually you don't need a permit to use people's images, because you can see who these people are.
Yeah.
Faces. You
can't really tell who they are, so yeah.
Can we maybe go on with breaking down the production process? Do you have something?
This was pretty much it. It's there was a question last night where someone asked me how I did the morphing, And I have that as an example, because that was a big part of it. I wasn't sure how to transition between scenes. And sometimes in the film there's cuts, but a lot of times it's like this morphing. So I had to come up with this process. So I made this little example. It starts, if there's one scene, so this would be like scene 3, and this would be scene 4, and they're two totally different point clouds, and I'll just kind of bring them so that they be in the same general location. And then you have to sort them, because all points have a point number, if we zoom in here. So if you see all these points have little numbers, there's roughly 120,000 points per frame when I shoot the LiDAR. And then because the two different scenes will have different numbers of points, because one, like we can see how this one has 127,844, this one has 108 and 627. And so you can't morph one scene that has more points into a scene that has less points, because there'll still be leftover points and they won't know where to go. And so from there I have to group them into one same number. So here I'm just picking 100,000 points from both scenes. 100,000 there, 100,000 there. And then I just delete off the excess points. But then I have to, because when you're taking one scene and you see like point 158, it's going to have to travel to point 158 in the other scene. And so it kind of has to know where to go. So then I'm sorting the scene by Y, the Y-axis. So I'm telling the topmost point, you're going to be point number 0. The bottommost point, you're going to be point number 100,000, and everything stacks in between. And so it gives it kind of a general, they're kind of in the same location, each point generally. And then I can bring it down into this node, and I can just blend between the two. And so when I got to a certain point in the editing process and I knew which scenes were going to go into which scenes, I had to make this whole setup with, 10 different files blending into each other. And then once they're there, they can be colored. And then I float the camera through and render it out. And then I brought it into Nuke to composite it, because we were shooting at 10 frames a second, but it wanted to be 24 frames a second. So I had to interpolate the frames. And Nuke is very good at blending 2D frames together. And then I just bring it into Premiere and do the final edit. And the whole time I was kind of recording the voiceover at the same time I was doing the imagery. There was no script that was informing the entire process. The entire process, which is what I really love about animation. It can be so fluid. It can be you're writing and you're shooting or animating, and then you can rewrite and re-edit and go back and forth. Where in live action, I would be stuck to what I shot, and then you fall into these traps, and then you're screwed in the editing room. So that's also why I really love animation. I can go back and forth, and I always try and work alone for the same reason. It's like I don't want to have to hire someone, and then I get to a point where, I don't like this, I need to re-edit, I need to reshoot, and then go back to the people and beg them to come back and shoot for me. So, yeah.
Did you have sort of a storyboard on a certain stage of the process of making this film? Or how did you plan this? So I go to bar, or I just stroll down the street, or how did you prepare this imagery, these scenes?
Yeah, there was never any storyboards. I'm really terrible at drawing. I wish I was better, because I would love to storyboard my ideas. But it more just became, I kind of had locations that I wanted to shoot at, and then I amassed tons and tons and tons of footage. You probably see about 5% of what I shot, actually, because I would go and shoot for hours. And then I edited it together, and I was only missing like one thing, and that was me walking down the street, and I thought, okay, I have to have this ending. So that was the only thing that I really planned out. Everything else was kind of shot like documentary style, if you will.
Actually, you said you had a lot of footage, and how heavy are files you get from LiDAR?
Yeah, they're
how can you
huge.
process?
They were huge. Yeah, it captures many gigabytes that turned into many terabytes, and then backups and backups. So this film exists on like an 8 terabyte drive somewhere. And hopefully that footage will turn into something again.
Well, we can go on with Houdini if you want to.
I did want to show just how quickly technology has progressed. When I made this film, I was using the Ouster LiDAR, and as I was making it, Ouster themselves made a better version. So like I said earlier, the angle of viewing was very small. It was about 45 degrees, and it was a huge challenge in making it. And as I had the one that they gave me, they came out with another one that had like almost a 90-degree field of view. So everything moves so quickly. And then when I was finished with the film, now iPhones have LiDAR. And so you could, I could sort of have made this film just with my phone. Sort of the LiDAR that I use can shoot at 10 frames a second, but the LiDAR on the iPhone, it acts more like it captures one scene, so it can't get movement. But I did want to show this scene. So I showed the photogrammetry before, if I still have it up. That photogrammetry, it'll get more detail than LiDAR will, and you can mesh it better. But I spent probably 2 hours photographing that room. Like this room would probably take me 5 hours of photography. And now with the iPhone LiDAR, I shot this yesterday, actually. And so this is, I was at Chernobyl, I was at Pripyat, and I scanned this in probably about 1 minute. And so just within 1 year, it went from like 6 hours to make a point cloud to about 1 minute.
So how did you extract this footage from iPhone? It was shot by iPhone, right?
Yeah, so the iPhone actually has LiDAR itself. It's not using a camera, it's just using a LiDAR sensor. And there's an app that I use called Sitescape, and it'll capture this. And it's coloring the dots. So it is using the RGB camera as well. It's coloring the dots by the RGB camera, but getting the positional data from the LiDAR. And so now, yeah, I've been doing some experiments. I don't have any to show you here, though. But I can bring this into Touch Designer. And everything I was doing in my film, I could do it completely live. I could bring it in and manipulate the points. And yeah, the LiDAR I was using, too, you can use it with. I don't know if you guys like Touch Designer, but you were saying earlier there's a lot of Touch Designer.
We have sort of a scene of people who use it for different art experiments.
That's great, because I think Touch Designer is like the most amazing piece of software. It can do anything you want it to do. And that's actually how I found out about the Ouster LiDAR unit, because Touch Designer supports Ouster directly. You could plug that into a computer, and you can be running LiDAR streams and manipulating it in Touch Designer, which I did play with as I had the Ouster unit, but none of it made it into the film.
So actually, maybe you could elaborate how did you use Touch Designer for this particular film, for Forever?
Oh, I did not use it. I just was playing with it. I never used it for... But the whole film could be done in Touch Designer live, I guess. I mean, we could be, viewing this right now, and it would look just like my film live.
So maybe you had an idea to have sort of live streams of such thing.
Yeah, I think it would look really cool. I would like to make like a music video now using this technique. Because also I was only using one LiDAR unit, which is limiting. And like you can see in the film, like if we look at watch this again. There's this like shadowing effect where the LiDAR is hitting my arm, and it's going here and making this ghosting effect, and then you can see the shadow of me, which I thought was really cool for the film. I really liked it, and I played with that a lot. I played with like my movements and positioning the LiDAR in certain areas to make certain shadows. It's casting like this hole in the data. But you could link together several ouster units. You could link 4 of them together, and you could get like a true volumetric capture. So you wouldn't get that shadowing effect because you'd have one shooting from behind. So people have asked me like, am I gonna keep exploring this technique? And I would love to, but I don't have the funding for it. So if anyone out there wants to
So it was one of a kind situation when Uster just give you the LiDAR unit for free, and nobody else can use this opportunity anymore.
Yeah, sorry, I used it up because I think they weren't too happy with it in the end, actually.
Oh, but Uster is not the only producer of LiDAR, actually, or not?
No, they're not. There's Velodyne. There's a lot of companies. HP is making one now. LiDAR is like, it's going to be in everything, I'm sure. I mean, we're all going to have self-driving cars in, I don't know, 15 years. And so LiDAR is going to be everywhere. And that's going to be incredible because that's an insane amount of data that's being collected. With these self-driving cars, we're going to have like an updated version of all the roads in the world, basically in real time. Yeah.
Yeah, and I want to say that my first encounter with LiDAR-produced imagery was maybe also your first. It was a music video of Radiohead made in 2007 or 8 for House of Cards track. It was, I remember it was hyped as a first ever music video made without a camera, camera-less. So actually it's a technology that was accessible for somebody like 12 years ago, and I saw some other music videos, but I don't understand why it wasn't used for filmmaking widely and for experiments like yours. Do you have any ideas about that, or why it's so?
I don't know. I mean, it's a cool looking image, and a lot of time cool looking images make their way into music videos first. I don't think it it just wouldn't work for a lot of films because a lot of films require high fidelity imagery to capture emotions and capture, performances, the look. I mean, that's what I love about live action film. Like, there's so much said without words. There's so much in the image of an actor's face, and acting is so difficult. It's really talented people that can act, and so I think the LiDAR, a lot of that's removed, and it worked in forever because that's kind of what I'm talking about. I'm talking about AI, and it's kind of removing a lot of personality traits, a lot of little things from humans, and seeing it in a different way, seeing it as like a low fidelity image of humanity. And it worked for me because I got to kind of use other people's likeness. And yeah.
Let's maybe discuss a bit an aesthetic and conceptual side of this point clouds. Well, for me it looks a little bit like, I don't know, low effort pin screen animation. Yeah, and actually, what was the concept of why did you need such imagery where part of it is shady, part of it is like shattered imagery? And how is it connected with the AI thing?
Yeah, because I think AI is only seeing us through what we give up. And although we do give up a lot, you can't really know someone. When you really meet someone for the first time, you only have this little glimpse of them. Like, I only know you as someone who's helping me translate and helping me do this interview, but you have a whole background and a whole life. And I think AI is doing the same thing. Like, AI thinks that it knows me from my searches, my Google searches, which as you know, I'm sure everyone has weird Google searches. They can get philosophical, like, what's the meaning of life? Or they can be really simple, like, how do I get to this place? Or what do I do? And so I see the imagery is the same way. It's only getting like 10% of who we really are. But it's hard to know a person.
Let's maybe get to narration part. The narration in your film, it is on one side it is pretty typical for American indie documentaries. Yeah. I'm sorry if you're not happy about it.
It's fine, no.
Okay, and on the other side it seems to be pretty unscripted, like just an improvisational monologue. Actually, how did you do it?
It was pretty improvisational. I tried to write it down. And it was very difficult to distill my writing into a script that would work as a voiceover. So I ditched that method, and then I would have these like long, almost therapy sessions with one of my mentors at USC, and we would record it. And so they'd be hour-long like therapy sessions, and then I would try and transcribe it and then edit that as like a paper edit, and then that really wasn't working, and then I just started to record myself over and over and over again. So I probably recorded that voiceover 50 times, and it was never right, and then I just kind of had this one moment where I just went ahead and tried it again, and I laid down in my bed and held the microphone right to my mouth, and that's what you hear actually. It was one straight shot.
Just no edits for pauses or just how?
There were very few. There were some edits, and getting all those little like nasty out of there.
I wanted to ask you. You live in San Diego, right?
Yes.
And do you have a sort of a scene of geeks, of art and science artists, or please describe it? The community maybe of some interesting people who do similar things that you do.
I don't know them. I'm a bit of a loner who spends all my time on the internet in my room.
Actually, it's very similar to a situation in animation in Ukraine.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to get animators out of the house. That's why I'm so thankful for these festivals. I never would have met any other animators if it wasn't for you guys bringing me here. I would say when I was at school, it's the same way in school. We're forced to meet each other and hang out with each other. And there is a cool scene in Los Angeles. A lot of the guy who created Touch Designer lives in Los Angeles, and he's very a part of the community of Touch Designer, Jarrett Smith. And yeah, I would run into him at different cool projection mapping things in Los Angeles. Yeah, but in San Diego, I'm sure it's there, and I'm just too shy to go find it.
No plans to go to Bay Area, maybe, when you can get all tech you want?
Oh, that's true, yeah. I mean, they all left from Corona, but yeah, I should try that.
Well, what kind of other career opportunities, or maybe not career, but art career opportunities, does an artist like you have in California, in the United States now? What will be in the future? You combine tech and animation and documentary and filmmaking. What are your future plans for future?
Probably video games. That's where everything's moving now. The gaming industry is huge. It's become like the biggest entertainment magnate, which I think is exciting. A lot of people I knew from film school, they're going into, everyone learned Unreal Engine. I'm just kind of lagging on that one. And yeah, it'll be video games, real-time stuff. Everyone wants to be real-time now. There's always, the VFX industry is still huge. But I'm still sticking into the art world. A lot of my work, yeah, is experimental art. I'm going to keep making short films. I sustain myself doing Yeah, little side projects for other artists. I don't know where I'm going to go next. This is kind of like my last, because I graduated a year ago, and then it's been Corona, it's been weird, and then this is like my last big, fun thing to do, and then I got to get serious and get a real job.
How do you think, when you have a real job, do you have time for art thing?
I think I do. As an artist, I mean, that's all I do in my free time is consume art and make art and read. And yeah, I mean, I have long days working as a freelancer sometimes, and then when I'm done and I think, okay, well, I have time to do whatever I want, and I'm still doing the same thing I was doing all day, but for myself. So I think as an artist, you just can't stop. I've tried and I can't stop, so.
Could you tell us about your maybe works in progress or your future art plans?
Yeah, I'm working on a film now that's very creepy and invasive. Actually, I have a clip I want to show you guys. And before I show it, I'll explain the process. So this next film is going to be about data again, but more like the data that we keep and maintain ourselves, because we're all very bad at it, I believe. I try my best, but I still have lost photos over the last 20 years. A lot of people have. But I found this out maybe 12 years ago, and it was completely fascinating to me that when you delete something from a digital drive, it's not really deleted. It still exists there. And so when someone deletes something, it can be undeleted because it still exists. So I've been buying other people's SD cards and other people's hard drives, and I've been recovering their deleted media, and I'm working that into a film. And oh fuck, I forgot to download it.
Did you give back this deleted, this recovered data to those people, to the regional owners?
No. Because I operate on zero budget, I take the SD card and then I do what's called a zero wipe, where you write complete zeros to the card so it's truly deleted and gone, and then I sell it. So.
Sounds actually like a business plan. You just help people to recover their data.
Yeah, that is a big... and I learned that skill like 6 years ago when I was fascinated by it, and it's come in handy a handful of times for me and my friends. They've like, oh shit, I accidentally deleted it. Like I formatted the card on my camera, but I forgot to transfer the images, and oh, no problem, just give it to me for an hour and I'll get it back to you.
Maybe we have questions from the audience. Oh yes, super. We'll pass the mic to you.
I will be in English.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I'm a bit late. Maybe you already told that. How did you study all this stuff? Because I tried to study touch designer and Houdini. I tried it many times for many hours, and I still don't understand how to use it.
Yeah, Houdini is a big hurdle, and touch designer is an even bigger hurdle. I had a really great teacher, Jordan Halsey, and he introduced me to it. But I'll say just in general, learning any software, the only way I can learn it is if I have a project in mind. And then you have that motivation to get over these hurdles. Like right now, like I mentioned, I'm trying to learn Unreal Engine because everybody says like, oh, the future is all Unreal Engine, real-time stuff. But I just don't have like a goal or a project to give me that drive and purpose. So if you're trying to learn Touch Designer or Houdini, just come up with think about all the stuff you've been thinking about and realize a project like a film or a visual piece, and then you just have to force yourself to get there, and you'll learn things along the way. But there are a lot of great, the touch designer community is really great. Their documentation on their website's fascinating, really helpful, and the forums are great. Yeah. Good luck.
Hello.
Hey.
As I remember, the last shot in your film was shot with a top view. How you did it? You use quadrocopter or something?
No, yeah, everyone thinks that it's a drone, but it was, I don't have it. Well, yeah, I can explain if I pull up Houdini again. Not this one, but this one. So this is how it comes when I shoot it. It's level and it's on the ground, but then we can see, like right now we're seeing it from a top view. So yeah, we shot that on a bicycle. I put the LiDAR on a bicycle and my friend was pushing the bicycle and I was walking behind it. And then when I brought it into Houdini, I just floated the camera, the virtual camera, up and away. Yeah.
As I understand, the only thing that natural in your movie is your language. The other things is digital. Did you try to use digital voice? Did you have these ideas to use digital voice in your movie? Or from the very beginning, you decided to use your real voice?
Yeah, I never thought about using a digital voice, but for a long time I thought about using a voice actor because I was very uncomfortable recording myself. I think everybody has that feeling where they don't like to hear their own voice, and I just had to get over it. And I was really inspired by Laurie Anderson, who does a lot of, all our work is like a voice over, and I just thought, if she can do it, I can do it. And it also kind of became, there was a deadline for the film, and I hadn't hired a voice actor, and I thought, I'll just, because I had been making these recordings of myself, and I kind of thought I would hand that over to a voice actor and say, make this better. And then I just thought, it's my story, it's about me, it has to be my voice.
And what about music, your movie?
Yeah, I had this, a temp track by, what's his name? I can't think of the artist right now. And I think everyone does this, to kind of fall in love with the temp music. And so I contacted him to get it, and he said, maybe. And I said, I'll show you. It was kind of early in the process, and I'll show you some visuals, thinking that he would think, this is a cool project. And then he never emailed me back. So then my friend Nakul is a composer, and I kind of gave him the track and said, hey, let's make something like this. It's in a similar realm, and it actually turned out way better. Because I would have had to double the temp track. It wasn't long enough for the film. So I handed it over to my composer, and we had great sessions together remotely, and he really drove the soundtrack to match the vocals more. So I was hesitant to do it because I just really wanted to, I thought I had the perfect music already, and I was a little bit lazy. I didn't want to go through the process of making the track, but in the end it was worth it for sure.
So music was made after the whole movie was finished?
Yeah, it was the last thing I did.
Uh-huh.
And he also cleaned the audio for me, so he's also a bit of a sound designer as well. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mitch, I find it very brave that you decided to keep this story too personal. And actually, how did you decide to reveal your vulnerability through this film? Was it hard? Did you have any doubts?
Oh, completely. I tried to avoid it a lot and tried to get the same idea and the same concept into a film without using my own story, and it would never worked. And I had a lot of encouragement from a lot of my advisors in school, and they just said, it's going to be better if you just are completely vulnerable. And I also didn't think that the film would ever really leave school, so I thought, it's fine. My classmates will hear it, my mentors will hear it. And then now it's had a very good run. And to go off that too, it was a little awkward, because then my mom was always like, can I see your film? And I was like, no. And then I would tell her like, oh yeah, it's really exciting. It got into like all these festivals. And then she's like, well, now can I watch it? And I was like, no, I don't think so. And then finally it got into Sundance, and I was like, okay, fine, you can watch it. And that was the most difficult, watching it with my mom.
Do you have any plans for further distribution of this film? Festivals, VOD services, or maybe you just throw it online for free?
I think, no, I'm just going to throw it online. Yeah. I had some distributors approach me, and yeah, I don't want to get too into details, but it kind of turned into this nasty subject where the school owns the copyright to my film, and they were going to take all the money that I made, and that kind of upset me because I paid them a few, like almost $200,000 to go to their school, and they're trying to like make money off my film. So no, it's going to go online for free soon. I'm kind of at the end of my festival run, so I'm happy to put it out there for everyone to see.
So no royalties for you? All money would go to the school?
Well, I mean, there's not a lot of money in short films. It's like the first $2,000 goes to them, and then they split the profit with me 50-50. And I won't be sharing this interview with USC either.
Oh, I hope they won't Google for it. Actually, the conflict in your film, it's when you were denied life insurance, and this denial was calculated by artificial intelligence. Do you still believe in artificial intelligence and in technology? Do you have this trust for it?
I do, and I think a lot of people don't, and I think a lot of people disagree with my film, and but it was an uncomfortable truth that I got, but it was true. I was acting in a very, my behavior was unhealthy, and it took AI to tell me that. AI is not perfect though, and I see a lot of people faulting AI for a lot of things, and I believe them too, but we can't dismiss it. It's like saying you can't trust the internet because people use the internet for crime, so let's get rid of the internet. Like, AI has its faults, but it's improving, and there's a lot of communities coming together to make sure that AI is used in ethical ways, and so let's not dismiss it so quickly.
Maybe we have questions from the audience. Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah, continuing the question about the last scene, about how did you make that cloud that become from the street view to messy cloud?
Oh yeah. I have that as an example. In Houdini, to make it so massive, I had to duplicate the scene. So I'm starting to add more points into it and reduplicate it. But to make it all noisy and stuff, this is another beautiful thing in Houdini, where you can manipulate on a point level. And so I'm just bringing in this noise. So I'm adding positional data to all the points. And then I'm running a generative keyframe where I'm telling the noise to carry through the points by each frame. And so it gives it this, and you can, I was just changing the amplitude of it. So there it is with color. And so as the camera's pulling out, I'm just giving it more and more amplitude. And so that's also how I started the film. I started the film with this noise and then slowly brought it down into the scene. For a while, I was actually going to make the film without any LiDAR. It was going to be all CG and then just reduced to points, and it was going to be all like these long moving shots of stuff like this. But only I thought that was interesting. I showed it to people and they were very bored.
Do you know any similar technology? Because in Ukraine we don't have a lot of such companies, and also I don't think that we can use it for free. So yeah, it's a very costly technology. Maybe there's an alternative.
I mean, I'm trying to find alternatives too because I don't have access to LiDAR anymore either. I think if you're interested in point clouds, to do photogrammetry.
Yeah, I've been working with that.
Yeah, so you can just use a cell phone camera. It's actually good enough. And there's free. What is that one called? Zephyr.
Zephyr, and I'm using Mushroom.
Yeah, so you can do a lot of that, and then I mean, Houdini and Touch Designer is kind of free. Mm-hmm. They have free versions.
Yeah, just this, you can't make, it's a lot harder to make an animation with photogrammetry because it's static and it will be not 8 terabytes to make an animation with photogrammetry.
Yeah. I mean, this is where art making becomes really enjoyable to me, is when you come up to these challenges and then you have to explore and figure out ways to do it. There was a small part in the process where I was using a stereo camera. I bought, I think I have it. I can show you later, actually, if you stick around. It's a stereo 180V. I was really into VR for a while, and it was like a stereo camera, and you can extract point clouds out of stereo cameras, because a point cloud is really just depth information, and you can extract depth from stereo cameras. And so there was a point where I was, shooting stereo and then bringing that into Nuke, which I know is expensive, but you can pirate it, and getting the point clouds that way.
And actually, I want to ask, how did you color points? Can you select some array of points to color them, or you just have to do it dot by dot?
I used maybe I went over it really quickly, but no, it's not dot by dot. It's based off this attribute called intensity, which is it's how intense the reflection was. So if the camera was pointed parallel to something, that reflection, the light hits it and bounces off. That's a very intense reflection. If it hits something more curved, like my leg, it's a lower intensity. So that intensity is then remapped into this color. But I could do point by point things. There was actually, and there's a scene where I needed, it's the time-lapse scene where the camera comes in on this guy at the bar, and he's alone, and I wanted him to be alone. When I actually shot it, he was with someone, and I could go and I created a little box around that person and deleted him, because I needed a lonely man. But the guy wasn't actually lonely. He was having a great time with his friend.
Yeah.
Yeah, hello.
Hello.
We talked a lot today about technologies that you already used for this animation. Maybe you can tell more about some technologies or programs that you are interested in, and you see that these technologies can be useful for animations. Maybe technologies that are already available or just in process of development.
One thing that I'm really interested in next, because I'm always, like I said at the beginning, I have a hard time considering myself an animator, because I'm always trying to get around doing keyframing, because I just think I'm not very good at it, and I'm a little bit lazy. And so right now I'm really into facial capture, using available technologies, because we've had facial capture for years and years and years, but it's getting a lot better now. And like the latest iPhone will do really good facial capture, and you can actually do it live in Unreal. You can link your, and now that we have the meta humans in Unreal, if you've seen that, where it's like super lifelike humans. It's really scary, actually. I can see that being used for nefarious reasons. But that's what I'm interested in. Not using things for bad reasons, but I'm really interested in this meta humans and being able to animate faces using my own face.
Yeah, actually, I even used the Unreal Engine and iPhone mimic recognition, and the interesting thing about this, even if it's not metahuman, but just simple like cartoon face, but you still can see the person who is behind the phone. You can see the mimic, and it was very risky. I wasn't expecting this, so if different persons use the phone, you can see whose mimics.
Oh yeah?
Yes.
Like you can tell by the personality, by the way they do it?
Yes.
That's interesting. That reminds me of something really interesting. During the process of the film, I got to go to a lab that's run by my university that it's half funded by the university and half funded by the military, which is kind of odd. And they had because I was going to do a 3D scan of my body. That was one way I was trying to get a point cloud of me. And they had a full body scanner that they had developed there. And while I was there was a researcher, Ari Shapiro, and I put him in the credits because he was such an interesting guy, and he did a lot for me for free. And he told me that when they were developing these full body scans, they would take a scan of someone's body and then do motion capture of their walk and then apply their walk cycle to their scan. But then they would take a scan of someone else and apply a different person's walk cycle to it. And even if you hadn't met that person, you could tell that the walk cycle didn't match the person's scan. So it's like a really interesting idea that we have this, like you can just tell from someone's body that their movement isn't correct. Yeah. And that's a scary AI technology too that's around, is your walk cycle is unique, and they've been using that in Hong Kong apparently as a way to identify people. So like even if you cover your face and you forget facial scanning, just the way you walk is an identifying feature.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Maybe one more chance to ask a question from the audience. Do you want to tell us something we haven't asked you? Anything you have on your mind?
No, I think we covered everything.
Okay, so I guess my last question will be techno-optimism or techno-pessimism, and why? Or maybe the third variant.
Yeah, I think it's a third one, which is just like techno-exhaustion. Like I just can't keep up with it, and I can't have an opinion about it all the time. It's Pandora's box. It's going. There's no stopping it. I'm sorry.
Okay. Thank you very much for coming, Mitch.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for your film, and I guess we're gonna see you with your next film, whatever it be.
I hope so. It's really creepy, so we'll see.
Okay, so thank you. Maybe we'll be finishing our artist talk, and I want to invite you all people to the second part of experimental animation program, which will be today at 8 p.m. in Kinoteatr Żowtyń. Thank you all.
Thank you.